Welcome, You're on the Fringe Show. I'm your host, Tatiana Zalan, and I go live every Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. The Fringe helps you to navigate the rapidly changing world and increase the odds of your success. Here we talk about startups, entrepreneurs, technology, and mental models of successful people so that you too can take advantage of the opportunities in the new digital world. The topic for today's show is Web 3.0 and what it means for creators. So if you're a creator, and it can be in any sphere of human life, you may be a digital artist, you may be a musician, you may be a craftsperson, you may be a photographer or an architect, then this show is for you. So Web 3.0 and what it means for creators. Let me see who is here, because this is a live show, and yes, Larissa is here. Yes, great. Good to see you, Larissa. Wonderful that you can attend the show, because that may be for you. You're a creator as well. Please identify yourself for Facebook so that I can see your names. Yes, Tracy, hello, great. Good to see you, Tracy. This is for you as well. So I was really enjoying when I was putting together some of the thoughts for that show. And please ask me questions or make some comments as we go along. So Web 3.0. But before we understand what Web 3.0 is and what kind of difference it makes in our lives, in the lives of creators, we need to go back and see how the web developed. So we go through two periods in web development, Web 1.0, which was the first era, and then Web 2.0. Web 1.0, starting with Web 1.0, it started somewhere in the 1980s and continued until early 2000s or mid-2000s somewhat. And some of the interesting characteristics during this period were, well, it was distributed, it was decentralized, open network where everyone can build applications. Those of you who are my vintage probably remember that back then in the 90s, websites were built using very static language, HTML. The pages only had the ability to do one thing only, and that was to display information. And there was absolutely no way for users to participate or to change the data. What was interesting also about that period in time is that the web was built on open protocols. And by protocols, we simply mean the rules for transmitting, for storage of the data as well. All these open protocols were controlled by the internet community. And that meant that nobody could take a unilateral control over them. So all these developers, all entrepreneurs or creators could be very confident that the rules of the game won't change, that the internet will remain fair and neutral. But there was one problem with that, with Web 1.0, is that open source is very hard to monetize. And this is exactly what we see in Linux, for example. It's a great platform, but very difficult to monetize. Also at the same time, huge web properties were started. We're talking about Google and Facebook and, of course, Amazon and Yahoo. All these big companies started at that time. It was a golden period of innovation. And so from Web 1.0, we enter into Web 2.0, which is from the mid-2000s until, some people would say, until present. I would argue it's actually not, because we are seeing the seeds of a new Web 3.0 coming. We saw a dramatic shift in Web 2.0 from static websites into interactive experiences. So users were were able to interact with websites and through the use of databases and servers in particular forms, and of course through social media, social networks. The emphasis was on user-generated content as well as interoperability between various sites and various applications. So Web 2.0 was a lot less about just observing what's going on and a lot more about participation. And by somewhere mid-2000s, most of the companies, most of the websites made this transition to more interactivity, to more dynamism, to Web 2.0. There were a couple of innovations that were particularly critical for this period for Web 2.0. Mobile came in 2007 in particular. iPhone arrived. Of course, it wasn't the first smartphone, but it was a significant event in the history of mobile. And now we moved on to being connected all the time. Whether it's good or bad is beyond the point. Sometimes it can be bad, but surely we are all connected 24/7. Social networks came in as well. Those of you, again, who are my vintage, would probably remember Friendster and MySpace. Facebook was not the first social network. There were others before Facebook. Facebook was the most successful, probably. Who remembers MySpace? Probably not many people. And cloud as well. Cloud was another foundational technology during this period, which commoditized the production and maintenance of internet pages and applications as well. Web 2.0 brought both good news and bad news. So let's start with the good news, of course, here. Beepo, okay. Beepo was a social network, yeah. Wouldn't remember that one. Many of them just came and went. So the good news, back to the good news. The good news is that billions of people got access to amazing technologies, and very often for free. So billions of people on the planet got access to these technologies. But there were also bad news, and it became harder and harder for startups, creators, and other groups to grow their internet presence. All of a sudden, we found ourselves in a world where we were surrounded by trusted intermediaries and gatekeepers. And we had to trust the opaque code written by some unknown developers sitting in Facebook and Instagram and all these big tech giants, right? And this trust was very often breached. And we had multiple examples of rug pull, what we call rug pull. Let me give you an example here of, I'm sure you know Russell Brunson. Some of you would know he's co-founder of ClickFunnels, and he's also one of the first internet pioneers, you could say, because he was using internet technologies back in the early 2000s. He was trying to do e-commerce on Google with the help of Google Ads. At the time, when he recalls this example, he was paying something like 25 cents per click. And all of a sudden, the Google slap happened. This is what happened. They call it the Google slap. People called it the Google slap. But for me, it looked like it was the end of my online career. My costs went from 25 cents a click to $3 per click or more. Instantly, half the online entrepreneurs who were buying ads on Google, including myself, lost their business overnight. And many of these entrepreneurs who went from 25 cents to $3 never actually recovered. So their businesses were lost. They were trying to figure out what it was that made Google to do this slap. And they came to the conclusion that Google, after all, was not very interested in small businesses. They were after $1 million budgets of big brands. So they just didn't care about the small guys like Russell Brunson and other internet entrepreneurs. Tracy is saying that she knows Russell very well. Yeah, he's very well known for his work, for particularly inventing ClickFunnels, which is a sales funnel, but more than that, more than just a sales funnel. So that's just one very, very common example of a rug pull. But there are other things that are not very visible, but yet we need to understand what was happening or is happening still with the Web 2.0, and that's manipulation of users and developers. What happens when a platform launches? Consider, for example, Uber or Facebook. They want you to come in. They want you, users, to join the platform. And they want developers to join the platform as well, third-party developers. And of course, they're very nice to you. they give you subsidies, which is what Uber, for example, gave to taxi drivers at the beginning as they were trying to build up the supply side of their platform. And so that everything is nice and cozy until one particular period in time when a platform gains speed, it gains users, it becomes powerful, and then it says, we don't need you anymore. We don't need these categories of users. We don't need developers. And they change the rules of engagement almost instantly, as we have seen in the example of Russell Brunson. So this move from cooperation to competition, which is not very well understood, yet it happens almost in plain sight. And plus, all these big platforms have absolutely no conception of digital property rights. So I think, yes, manipulative sucking in to make this, yeah, exactly, making the switch. Once you gain some traction, once you gain your user data, you start creating lots of value for those users, and then we are saying, no, we don't need you anymore. So I think probably we've outgrown Web 2.0 and this approach of tech giants, because they treat us as products, is very exploitative. I don't think they actually set out themselves to do it, but it was the inevitable consequence of the advertising model that they adopted. They also addicted us to their platforms. Just look at what's happening on TikTok. It's highly addictive. They're not even hiding it. They're talking about very openly. They keep this us kind of sellable. They tap into our data, into our data network effects that we as users help them build, and this is what increases the value of the platform and justifies their $1 billion market capitalization. And here comes Web 3.0. What is different about Web 3.0, which I think we see emerging right now? It's open, built with open code. It's trustless. You don't need a third party. You don't need an intermediary to enable transactions on the platform. And it's permissionless because users and suppliers, they can participate without any sort of authorization from a third party. In many ways, what we will be seeing with Web 3.0, it's exactly what we saw with Web 1.0. It's decentralized, it's distributed, it's open public network, and everybody can build applications on top of that. But we also have two very interesting characteristics. It happens with native trust, and it happens with native cryptocurrencies that allow us to enable value exchange and payments, and all this is native to the internet, native to the application. So Web 3.0, we don't really know what it can, what are the underlying technologies. It's still shaping up, but it's peer-to-peer. So peer-to-peer networks like blockchains, pretty much part of it. Open source software as well. Artificial intelligence, virtual reality, and Internet of Things. Yeah. Publicized a lot of the social. Yeah, exactly right, Larissa. And here comes decentralized Web 3.0, and why does it matter? Chris Dixon wrote a great article called Why Decentralization Matters, where he captures some of these ideas. And let me just walk you through some of his most interesting ideas in this article. And what he says is that it's not because of lack of government control. This is what users or developers are seeking because they are libertarians, and this is why they want to go into crypto and so on. It's not because of that. It's because of this dynamic that I've just described of switching from cooperation to competition. That's one thing. And because of that, as a consequence of that, entrepreneurs, developers, and investors, they actually very wary of building on top of centralized platforms. And as a result of that, as a consequence, innovation suffers. They even have an additional criterion now in Silicon Valley when they judge entrepreneurial opportunities, when they look through the decks, and whether there is a platform risk. Because if there is, they probably won't invest in you. because they understand this dynamic, they understand what might happen. Plus, users like you and me have completely lost our privacy. They control our data. They become vulnerable to all sorts of security breaches. And these problems are not going away. They're going, if anything, they're going to be amplified with all these centralized platforms. Plus, and I think it's a very important point here, is that innovators and creators as well aren't necessarily capturing all the value that they create, or a lot of value that they create. And a lot of it is going to the platform or some copycats that are fast followers as well. The good news here is where crypto networks step in, networks like Bitcoin and Ethereum and Polkadot add and offers a different solution. And it is a very fundamentally different solution, because all of a sudden, through crypto, we have an incentive mechanism for developers and early users. This is why it's a very good attractor. It's a very, very good attractor for all these developers and early users, early adopters on the platform. Web 3.0, it takes control back. I think it allows us to have self-sovereign identity, and the token is interesting because it embodies the business logic of the platform. Web 3.0, in my opinion, opens up limitless opportunities. About a decade ago, Kevin Kelly, who was the founder of the Wired magazine, he's also a bit of a futurist, an author. He wrote a few books on how the future would look like. He wrote an interesting article called 1,000 True Fans. And in this article, he said, well, if you're a creator, if you're, for example, an animator, designer, an author, app maker, photographer, musician, then you don't need to have millions of fans, of followers, millions of customers. You don't need to have even millions of dollars in income. You can have a really good living because of the internet if you only have 1,000 fans. He wasn't really prescriptive about it. But it was just the order of magnitude between 1 million fans that some people would say you need to have, and 1,000 fans. It can be 500, it may be 1,500, that's not the point, but that just the scale is very different. And I think what happened is that this idea, very good idea by Kevin Kelly, was usurped by big platforms who said, no, we don't want that. We want to have the business model of advertising. We'll sell you data. We'll serve you all these algorithmic feeds. And I think what now happens, we can go back to Kevin Kelly's original idea. But there's even better news. I think what I see at least happening is that you don't even need 1,000 fans. Sometimes a lot of creators using platforms such as Podi and Teachable, these are platforms specifically designed for creators, you can have 100 fans with them. And even on some platforms, you don't even need 100 fans. I've recently been listening to an interview with the CEO of Mighty Networks. Mighty Networks is a new social network for creators. It's a blend of an education platform with a social network, I would say, where you can easily build communities around a creator, around an idea, and so on. So she was saying that some of her creators are making quite a decent living with 30 fans. So this is what the internet has enabled us to do. What we see now is the emergence of an economy that has different names. It goes under different names. People call it creator economy. Some people call it passion economy. Some call it ownership economy. No matter what you call it, but I think there are underlying, they're slightly different. All of them have a little bit different flavor, but I think the underlying pattern, the commonalities between all these economies is that all of a sudden we have novel economic rewards. We have an opportunity to participate in platform governance. We have voting rights, which of course platforms, big tech giants do not give us at the moment, and also enable us to develop new forms of social capital. So I think it's a very, very exciting time. Familiar with Mighty Networks? Yes? Okay, great. Hi, Ange. Good to see you on the show. Welcome. What is different about Web 3.0, about crypto networks? I'm sure what we're going to witness is probably one of the biggest changes to global business models in modern history through social tokens and DAOs. DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization, and I will talk a little bit about that just in a while. But let's start with social tokens first. What we need to understand that we're very, very early into the game. It's like the early internet, and many of these ideas are less than 1 year old. Social tokens can be, they come in different flavors as well. It can be social capital tokenized, your brand, your participation of your users, your fandom, and so on. And what's different here, what we're seeing, is with Web 2.0, what we can do, create it like Tracy or Larissa or Angie, what we are doing right now, we're going to a platform like Buzzsprout or YouTube or Facebook, and we provide our services and we get hopefully an income, right? But this is not what we're going to see, or this is not all that we're going to see with Web 3.0. What we are going to see is ownership. So we can have a stake in the future of the platform. It's an equity stake. And therefore, in addition to income, we can also have significant wealth built up. How can creators benefit from that? It's actually not very clear yet, but what is clear is that we have 3 broad types of social tokens. Personal, like if you're a big influencer, you can launch your own social token. You can have a brand token. Some legacy brands might want to consider that, might want to launch their own token, and community tokens. Community-centered tokens can also be in different flavors, like creator-centered fan clubs or decentralized autonomous organizations. I'll give you an example of these tokens that already exist. Friends with Benefits is one. It's a community token. And let me just brought their manifesto. They've got a manifesto which is very interesting. They just saying what they stand for, why the rules of the game are the rules of the game, what are their values, what they expect from community members, and so on. So this is how they describe themselves. We're a collective of unique individuals pushing for a bright future, a world in which prosperity is abundant and technology acts as a communal connective tissue. We believe in a Web 3.0 world where data and payments are fluid and controlled by the creators. We believe in the pursuit of open knowledge for the greater good. The tools for connecting the dots are finally here. And then they explain why they want everybody to buy their token. It's because everybody needs to have the skin in the game, need to have the incentive, the economic incentive to make sure that as community grows, the value of it grows to the members, but also to token holders as well. So it's both elements. You can trade the token if it's it has gone up in value, or you can trade on decentralized exchanges or centralized exchanges, and so on. And you can either contribute this token if you want, for example, some specialized access to channels or pieces of information that are exclusive, or maybe they have some loyalty points for their members. So you buy more of the token as a user and as a community member, but you can also earn the tokens as well if you, for example, provide a piece of information or some tips or some lessons for the community that help them to do their job, like tips for trading, for example, and so on. So you can spend your token, but you can also earn your token, which I think is a very cool idea. So skin in the game is an absolute must for all these community tokens. And the last time when I looked at valuation of friends with benefits, it was $140 million. It's a very young project. I really don't know of any other company, tech company in history that reached this kind of valuation so quickly. So that's one example of that. I'm just looking at some of the comments here. So, yeah, social brand and community tokens. Yeah, personal tokens as well. It's not just social that you can have, but also personal or influencer token, if you will. Daniel Prawn Cook, you need to watch this. Okay, I'm glad that you're recommending it to someone. Another platform that I just want to give you an example of is Rally. Rally is different from Friends with Benefits. Rally is a fan and creator token. If you're an influencer, if you're a creator, you come on this platform and you issue your own token. This is what it's all about. At the moment, they're mostly catering for video games and streamers, those gamers who live stream their games, and they have large fandoms. Fans are very happy to watch the games, maybe get access to some privileged tips and bits of advice and so on. But they're also tapping into the musician category. So if you're a creator of that type, that might be a platform for you to have a look at. And finally, we arrive at a DAO, and the DAO universe is not really well explored. We're just starting to understand how it all works. What's a DAO, decentralized autonomous organization? It's a set of smart contracts. There's no company. There are no kind of humans running it. Everything is written in the code. And so you can be very, very certain that because this code has made some commitments to how it will, say, distribute equity, distribute ownership, distribute tokens, you can absolutely be certain these are the rules and they will never be changed unless you as a community decide that you want to change something about the voting rights, for example. Tracy is asking, what do you need to do to create a personal community-based tokens? Well, you need to go to one of these platforms and just do it. Rally will allow you to create a fan token. For example, for a community token, you create it. You write a piece of code and you list it on some of the exchanges. You can list it on a decentralized exchange, but doesn't really cost you almost nothing, I think. We can definitely have a chat about that, Tracy. I'm happy you raised this question. And we see more and more people trying to do that. Rally, yes, exactly right. Rally. Rally, correct. Going back to the DAO, let me give you an example of a recent DAO that illustrates how it can be done. And the example is coming from Uniswap. Uniswap is a decentralized exchange which is built on Ethereum. It's a very interesting exchange. It was kind of an innovator and came up with a breakthrough idea that only existed in textbooks, actually implemented it. It's called AMM, Automatic Market Maker. So that was a breakthrough idea. And since then, they made a few upgrades and updates to the code. And so a few months ago, they released Uniswap 3, that's it, version 3, a new version that's better than all the previous ones. Yes, an upgraded version. And one of the digital artists, her name is People Pleaser, believe it or not, so a pseudonym with a large fandom, large following, she decided to turn it produce a video with a bit of music and turn it into an NFT, non-fungible token. So if you look at this video, the mascot for Uniswap is unicorn. You see in this video, short video, it's only one minute or even less, how this unicorn is depleted of his or her magical powers, how he's rambling on the rocky terrains, rocky mountains, and all of a sudden the algorithms, the code of Uniswap kind of spring from the seeds as if, and they lead the unicorn to the spring of eternal life, to lake full of Ethereum. I think that was the creator's vision, I guess, and the unicorn becomes again very powerful, gains his magical powers. The community, people pleasers community, absolutely loved it, and they said, we're going to own it. So they created a DAO, no company, just a set of smart contracts, and now they have pieces of this NFT, which was sold to them, to the community. They bought it, and also they have ownership of the DAO itself. So a genuine creative community. The NFT itself sold for over $500,000, and all the proceeds went to charity. So that's interesting example of how it can be done through a DAO. And as I mentioned, the DAO is not very well understood. We don't understand what the capabilities are, but it's slowly growing. Some of the key takeaways for creators. This is symbolic, a bit of a truth from an longing to obtain eternal power. Maybe Larissa, great comment. This is symbolic and metaphoric truth of human longings to obtain eternal power. Probably only it was a unicorn that had these longings. Yeah, it's well worth watching. It's quite an interesting and very creative piece. So I hope from this discussion that we had today, you have a few key takeaways for you as creators. Firstly, I do believe that there are enormous limitless economic opportunities for creators that we didn't have before, because what Web 3.0 will have, it will have the capabilities of Web 2.0 plus additional ones. And that's very, very powerful. We are not there yet. For example, it's very difficult to build a decentralized social network yet, but we will get there, I'm quite sure. There are already billion-dollar communities being created as we speak. They're just not visible yet, but it's very much advisable. This is what I urge you to do, to watch the space and see who is emerging. There will be new business models emerging, and they are not based on advertising and not based on selling your own personal data. The path to that is still not clear. There are no templates, there are no how-to rules, no 5 easy steps. I don't think it will be very easy. It's really a very unique path for each and every community. But if you are on this path, you can really be a trailblazer and come up with some breakthrough innovation in how we think about incentivizing people to contribute, to create new things, exciting things for the world. Yeah, we will get there. Yes, yeah. Yes, it is the fringe, but slowly but surely it will become the mainstream, I believe. Okay. Yeah, I'm just looking in the comments and see whether there are any questions. Yes, we will get there, absolutely. Well, thank you for joining. I think we can wrap it up. I shall see you on the Fringe Show next Friday at 2 p.m. Dubai time. Thank you for joining. Thank you for supporting me. Thank you for supporting the Fringe and being interested in this fringy and definitely non-mainstream ideas. And I think it's now time for a little bit of music, which I absolutely love. I love my jazz.